was a drought in Teso area, and also in areas of Ishingiro in Ankole, and areas of southern Masaka. That's the time I'm talking about. I decided to telephone one of our church leaders who has established a farm in Wamagwa area. Wamagwa, you reach Lyantonde on Masakambara Road, and you go south. Those areas of those lakes, like Lake Janibarora and so on, those areas are drought-stricken areas, and that is where this gentleman has started a farm. So I called him to find out how he has been coping with the drought. And he told me, Laban, I have enough water to last me 2 years. I said, what happened? He said, we have dug dams and we have been practicing water storage, and we're okay with water. And as we talked, he stopped and he said, Laban, do you remember the vision you shared with us, 1987, 1988? I said, which vision was that? He said, you talked about communities in the countryside. I said, yes, of course I remember. So he said, I was inspired to start my farm from that vision you shared with us 30 years ago. Now, as he talked with me on telephone, the Holy Spirit prompted it in my heart that the time had come for that vision of a new Africa to be fulfilled. So I began looking around for land to see if we could begin a pilot project to establish such communities. At that time, even as I said earlier, I didn't realize God must have been showing me the way the nation of Israel began to reconstruct right from the desert, establishing a new nation. And so I looked around for land. Now, not that there is no land, land is plentiful in Uganda, but I wanted to start in the right location so that we don't experience difficulties, unforeseen difficulties in establishing the first community, so that we can have it as a pilot project for starting similar communities around the country. So we found a piece of land in Mubende area, and we began negotiations for purchasing it. And as I talk now, we've got 61 acres to start the first community in that area. Actually, here I have a land plan which we engaged a land planner to do it for us. We have the starting plan for the project, which we're very excited about. Now, already we have more than 10 families who have invested their money in the purchase of the land. And so very soon we'll be subdividing it, even as we've seen in the land plan, so that we begin building this community. One of the other big advantages of this setup is it is a model of development which is very different from what the nations are following today. Now, most African leaders believe that the way to develop Africa is to invite investors to come into our country, put up farms and factories and industries, and then employ our people in those factories and industries. Now, that is the model which people have followed in almost every nation I know on earth. We've used it in the Western world, in Asia, and so on. And when you visit those nations, they look very highly developed because they have these big industries, big factories and industries. But when you observe closely, you discover beside every big city, there are a slum, there are slums. Now, when you visit Johannesburg, we have all these big, powerful industries. But then the same place, Johannesburg, you find Soweto, you find these days you have, Soweto in fact is good looking because it's organized living, although it is poorer. But then these days, since this independence of South Africa, 1994, Many people have moved from the countryside and set up cardboard box, houses, residences in unplanned areas. And these are now everywhere. You find them in Johannesburg, you find them in East London, you find them in Cape Town, you find them in many places in South Africa. Now, that is the kind of result of that kind of model of development. You have a very rich place, but the people come to work there. They don't have the means to rent these expensive dwellings. So they find their level in these slums. And that is everywhere. You find it in New York, you find it in all these cities in America. Now, and yet, when you follow this mode of development which we have in Israel, it does not create slums. Because the very people who come to stay in the kibbutz are the same workers in those factories. They're the same workers in the cottage industries. And so they don't leave the place to look for somewhere else to stay. They're the members of the community. And that mode of development does not create slums. We find the same thing happened in South Korea. South Korea began to build after the Korean War, which split North Korea and South Korea. And some church leaders had this vision of model villages. Model villages were similar to the establishment of these kibbutz and moshavs in Israel. And even in South Korea, when the development began with those model villages, and those model villages did not create slums, because the very people who populate those villages are the workers in the cottage industries and in those model villages. So this is a model of development which I call the model development of Zion, rather than the other model which I call Babylon. So I think there is something powerful in what God is showing us. Yeah. We could stop there for the time being and we'll see what direction